What's going on, everybody? I'm going to make this real quick. Brian Norman Jr., Jaron Ennis. Negotiations fail. There's going to be no fight. Brian Norman Jr. is going to move on to fight Derek Cuevas. All right, don't know who he is, but he's going to be fighting him on the undercard of Keyshawn Davis next show. Look, man, Brian Norman Jr. is coming off his biggest win, his best performance, and his biggest win. He has stepped up to fight Santillan and destroyed him. Santillan was coming off his biggest win. Now, I'm not saying like this was a super like big name fight, but it got people's attention. You know, like the hardcores knew who Brian Norman Jr. was. A lot of casuals didn't. So that win put his name on the map. And then him being recently elevated to champion after Crawford dropped all the belts. Everybody's going to got elevated as champion at 147. So even though there's no big names, it seems like the biggest names in the round, that division, is at 135, 140, and 154. But 147, it could be fun simply because you do have Jaron Ennis there. You have Conor Ben if he decides to come back down. And then you have, Stanionis, you got Barrios. People are familiar with these guys. So Brian Norman, he's coming off his big win. Neither him or Jaron Ennis actually won the belt from beating someone because Crawford had the belt and he obviously didn't defend the titles against those two guys. But this fight here, just because of the trash talking that's going online, I just assume at 147, and I'm sure many of you can agree with this. Let me know in the comments. I really didn't think Boots was going to get a fight against any of these guys. Why? He's with Matchroom. I'm sure Eddie's paying him well. Boots is coming off his biggest performance out in Philly. I was there. I just didn't think, being that Brian Norman was with Top Rank, being that, Barrios and Stanionis is over there with the PBC. I know a lot of fights, crossover fights are being made now. But it seems like if it doesn't involve Turkey Al-Sheikh and Riyadh season somewhere, maybe we might have the same conflict of promoter beef. You know what I mean? It's still kind of happening. So I just didn't think it would happen. But with all the talk we've seen online, especially with Brian Norman and his pops, I started to get a little excited this week. Why? Because he's going and he's responding to certain things that was said. He's talking about their sparring sessions and how he's willing to pull up in Philly. I'm like, damn, Brian Norman's not playing around. Like, he sounds really confident. He sounds like he's really about making this fight happen. So I'm with it for both fighters because, like him, Boots, he's coming off a win against David Avanesian. And I know to a lot of people that's like not a big deal. But the fact that it was a big performance and he had like sold out the arena and it was one of the biggest attendance fights in Philly in like many, like 4 decades or something crazy. I'm like, all right, Boots is buzzing. Why? Because he's coming off a big show. He just signed a good deal with Matchroom. Everybody knows him now as a guy that, was a rival to Bud in a way. Like, a lot of people wanted to see that fight. So his name is connected to Bud, even though they didn't fight each other. He seems to be the popular dude at 147 right now. Because Virgil moved up, Spence moved up, Bud moved up. So he seems to be that guy. So the timing of a show and a fight with him was perfect. Everything, it was ripe. Like, Brian Norman, before this recent fight with Santion, what did we know him from? His sparring session with Bud. He did a few interviews. There was some rumors about this kid hurting or buzzing Bud and sparring. You know, it's kind of like the Triple D situation with Anthony Joshua. When Triple D first came out, they was promoting him as a guy that sparred with AJ, and apparently he hurt him or dropped him. So it was like the same situation. So when Brian Norman started having his fights on these undercards on Top Rank, I was checking for him because I'm like, oh, this guy hurt Bud. He might be pretty good. But I seen his fights. I wasn't that impressed. I thought he was okay, but it just wasn't like, it was all right. And like, you guys know, he looked all right. I remember he had the fight with Quentin Randall, and that was like a step-up fight. And Quentin failed to engage. And Brian really didn't know how to get to him. So it was like a 10-round, like, snoozer, right? Nothing happened. And then he had a fight after that where there was a head clash. And the fight was just ruled a no contest because of the bad cuts or something. And a few fights before those two, again, good performances, but nothing amazing. He wasn't stopping no one, nothing crazy. So at the end of the day, him coming off in the Santion win, when Santion was coming off his best win, when he annihilated Alexis Rocha, you go into this week and you talk all this talk, and apparently they send you 1.5 million. I think they offered you 1 million and then they pushed it up to 1.5. This is according to Eddie Hearn. And you turn it down after all of that. You hyped up the world. I mean, this is what people was talking about all week. This is the first fight that you had or you were going to have that people were excited about. And this was the first fight now that Boots was having that people were excited with him about. Why? Because it would have been a unification. It would have been your first times actually fighting another champion. And just like that, the buzz is dead. And now everyone is going to look at you as the guy that ducked Boots Ennis. Officially. Not like Bud or like or any of these other fighters that moved up or had other fights that were more significant. No. You were in direct negotiations. You went online and started doing interviews talking about Boots, how you were willing to pull up just to back out, and within the same 24 hours, a fight with your next opponent who no one knows on the undercard of a Keyshawn Davis card. That news drops. What is going on? What is going on? What just happened? You got us excited for nothing. And right now, we're getting good fights. Like, still some bullshit. Like, we're still getting some bullshit like 135, Tank, Shakur, William Cepeda. We're still getting some nonsense, but for the most part, we're getting quality fights. For something like this to happen, where you're not a big name, Jaron Boots has grown to be a big name. But this was your opportunity. Now, if you had just mysteriously, if this news had dropped with your next opponent and we didn't hear no response from you, if you were just like chilling, like the way Stanionis is, or Mario Barrios is, or whoever else is at 47 right now, no one would have cared if we announced your next opponent. But the fact that you publicly kept doing interviews, you and your dad, talking about Jaron Boots Ennis, and try to expose the contradictions he's made and certain things that him and his team have said or his promoter have said. You go on a press run just to drop this news about your next opponent with us knowing now details on past purses, 200K being your highest purse, but you turning that 1.5 million? Come on, dog. Like, even if it was 1 million, bro, it's the opportunity of you getting a unification. It's the money. I don't know, man. Like, I just can't understand it. So now you fight this next guy. Let's just say this performance is similar to the performances you had before you fought Santion. And now people are like, yo, this guy's going back because, you're as good as your last fight. So let's say stylistically, the performance is not as pleasing as the Santion fight, right? And this guy is moving. He's doing all his best to evade you. It turns out being like the Quentin Randall fight. Now you killed your buzz. Even though you're still champ, your buzz is dead. Again. That's the problem with what just happened. Because Boots, they're going to get him in there with somebody. He might get forced. I personally believe that Boots is going to have to fight at 154. He's not going to be unified there. He might get some big fights, but unification at 147, I seriously doubt it. Because no one really wants to fight. Let's be honest. At 47, no one really wants to fight. All right. Anyway, I wanted to just speak on it real quick. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm out. Peace.